call this meeting to order. We'll begin with roll call. Richard Davila.
Amy Trost. Jackie Cooper.
No certification of a quorum. We'll continue with the business that we can do today. C, training for advisory board members.
Could for just a second before
Absolutely.
you get started. Carla James, TDLR. I just wanted to take a moment to introduce Commissioner Wesson, who is one of our commissioners on the TDLR commission, who actually votes on all the things that you all do all your hard work on and then pass it on to the commission. I just wanted to thank him for being here today.
Welcome.
Well, we thank y'all again.
Okay, agenda item C. This is the training for the advisory board members. I'm Wendy Pello, one assistant general counsels for the department. And this is a training that we like to do periodically for all our advisory boards. It's kind of a refresher training. I know you all had extensive training right before you started being on the advisory board, but we do like to do just periodic refresher trainings on this. It won't be very super in-depth, but it kind of refreshes your you on some of these important things like Open Meetings Act, the Administrative Procedure Act, and the Public Information Act. You also have materials, resources in your advisory board materials that you can take away and for additional information as well. So these are the three acts that we're going to cover today. We'll start with the Open Meetings Act. And the Open Meetings Act, and I think all three of these acts are important in terms of really promoting transparency and openness in state government. We want to make sure that all our actions are open to the public so they can see what we're doing, so they can participate when it's appropriate as well. The Open Meeting Act requires any meetings of governmental bodies be open to the public and be preceded by public notice, and so that's why we always post our agendas with all of the items that we will be discussing. We have them in an open meeting like this that the public's able to attend. There's an item for public comments, so we'll receive public comments as well. But make sure that it's open for the public to be able to watch and see what the processes are. And this is mandatory. And in the gray areas, it's always construed liberally in favor of having an open government. The big issue, first issue, is quorum, and quorum is having a majority of the advisory board present for a meeting. We have to have the quorum present to take any official action. Today is an example of when a quorum is not present, we can still hold the meeting, but you will not be able to take any official action on the agenda items. So when we have things like rules or approval of minutes, things like that, we won't be able to have you take any action on that, but we still can have some training and staff reports and things like that. Deliberation, and this is the simplest way to say it, is just a discussion. And it's a discussion, a verbal exchange during a meeting between a quorum of a governmental body or a governmental body and another person. And it's about issues concerning public business and business that comes before this advisory board. So it's any of those types of discussions. And it's important to realize that it may occur at any time that you're involved in a discussion. It's kind of obvious in this type of setting where you're in an official meeting room and you feel like, okay, we're having an open meeting, but it can also happen in other situations, and we'll get to that as well. But remember, it can happen at any time when you're discussing public business with a quorum of your advisory board. We're also required to provide advance notice, as I said, and it's date, time, place, and the subject matter. We do this at the agenda. We file it with the Secretary of State at least 7 days prior to the meeting. We also post it for TDLR, we also post it on our website. We have email delivery services that people can sign up and get notices that as well. But it's important with this notice is that this is telling the public this is what we're going to talk about. And so we can't talk about anything that's not on the agenda. So if there's items that you want to discuss that are on the agenda, we can put that on the agenda for a future meeting. A question we often get is what happens if you may have a quorum at a social event or a convention, national conventions. You also have trade association meetings and stuff like that. what happens, can we meet, can we discuss in that kind of setting? And the answer is yes, you're free to engage in conversation, but that's incidental to the event. However, the gathering will be subject to the Open Meetings Act if a quorum is present and you're discussing advisory board business. So just be mindful when you're in those types of settings. You're free to talk. You don't have to avoid each other. You're free to talk to each other. Just be aware that you don't wander into discussing things that are before the advisory board that would be considered or take any votes or make any decisions about that. So it's always be aware of, key points to remember, always be aware of any situation occurring out of a presently noticed meeting which a quorum is present. Like I said, it's obvious in this type of setting, but sometimes it's, is your industry, you may be meeting with other professionals. It may not dawn on you, think, oh wait, we need to be aware of that. So just be mindful of that, and that's kind of why we do these periodic trainings, to just remind you of that. Don't engage in substantive conversations relating to the board business when a quorum's present. And then just also be aware of the walking quorum. And the walking quorum is when you've got fewer than a quorum of your advisory board. You discuss the matter, and like today you could discuss it, maybe fine, but the problem would be if then you turn around and talk to other people on the advisory board. And so then you've what we call a walking quorum. The conversation, the discussion has walked to other people, and so now you've got a quorum of your advisory board. So that's when we do work groups. We're always being really cautious. Okay, you've got less than a quorum, and then please don't talk about this with your other advisory board members until we come to an open meeting to discuss those issues. And that way you avoid the walking quorum. This example has a 5-member advisory board. 2 members exchange phone calls and emails on a particular issue, and then they turn around and forward that exchange to another member, and so now there's the walking quorum. For this advisory board, we've got 9 members, so a quorum would be 5. It's important to know walking quorums can occur like conference calls, video conferences, hallway discussions, discussions before the meeting, maybe during a break in the meeting, after a meeting. That's always important to be mindful that when the meeting adjourns, that then we don't continue the conversations about what happened during the meeting. Another important thing in just with technology today is thinking about emails, text messages, and things like Facebook and Twitter. In that kind of conversation, you're not face-to-face, so it may not dawn on you, think, oh, we're having a discussion or we're having a meeting, but in those types of situations, it can be potentially very dangerous and tricky in terms of you're posting things on a Facebook or in some type of social media that allows other people to participate or to engage in that discussion or see the discussion going on. To avoid the walking quorum, you should not meet in small groups, discuss the committee business, and then communicate those discussions with other members. Send email or text messages to other members of your advisory board on official business. Even if you're doing it individual, you think, oh, I'm avoiding the quorum because I'm just sending it one by one, not everybody's on the email. That's still a problem. You're still having a conversation with everyone. Be careful about posts on social media about board business. And then also, don't ask a quorum of the members, even if on an individual basis, about how they feel about a particular issue or how they're going to vote, because that's called polling, and that's also prohibited. And basically, you're trying to get a sense of what everybody's going to do before you show up in a public meeting, an open meeting, and make those kind of discussions and have that type of decision. For guidelines for open sessions, limit your discussions to items on the agenda. Staff will often jump in and just, if the conversation starts kind of wandering off, and sometimes the conversations are good and it kind of conversation evolves, but we need to realize what's posted on the agenda for notice to the public, and it's not that we want to cut off the conversation, not have the conversation, it's just not at that time. We can put it on the agenda for a future meeting and have a full discussion. During public comment period, members of the public are given the opportunity to speak. Of course, they may raise a subject that's not on the agenda. We won't be able to discuss that. The advisory board can say thank you for your comment, and you can ask a clarifying question, but you can't get into a back and forth discussion with them. But it is something you would like to discuss. You can put it on the agenda for a future meeting to have a full discussion. And just best practices, we've listed a few best practices in terms of avoid violating the Open Meetings Act. limit discussions to these specific agenda items, avoid allowing discussions regarding certain items to wander off course, don't respond to or discuss issues that are raised during public comment, which are not on the agenda, and then identify any items for future agenda items and tell our TDLR staff about that, and we can put that on the agenda for a future meeting. And the reason we stress this and are really concerned about this is that it's very important, but it's also very important because we've got civil and criminal penalties as well. Civil penalties that anyone can petition the court to stop any actions that are taken in violation of the Open Meetings Act. So if the advisory board takes an action, those actions are voidable. They're not void, but they are voidable, so that someone can take an action to stop that action, and we'll have to start over. There's also criminal penalties, and this is for members who knowingly conspire to try and circumvent the Open Meetings Act. It's a misdemeanor with fines of $100 to $500, confinement at county jail for 1 to 6 months, or both. So it is important to keep this in mind in the Open Meetings Act. And again, it's not to prevent anybody from having discussions or having votes or making decisions. It's to make sure it's done in the open and very transparent. And again, just some final points. And again, we've got some Open Meeting Act resources. The Attorney General has a training video and some other information on their website. The training video is about an hour long, and it goes through a bunch of different examples and information, much more in depth on the Open Meetings Act. That's really helpful. They've also have a handbook. We've also listed the sites to the statute, and then the General Counsel's office phone number as well. If you ever have any questions about Open Meetings Act, or questions about can I send this email out, or who can I talk to, or you can always give us a call. The next act we want to talk about is the Administrative Procedure Act. And this is for the APA, this is really establishing standards for state agencies in terms of our processes and procedures for both contested cases and rulemaking. And really what's the focus for our advisory board is the rulemaking part of it. And really, again, going back to transparency and open government, is we really want to encourage public participation and transparency in the rulemaking process. And again, a rule is a statement by a state agency that implements, interprets, or prescribes all our policy, and then describes the procedure or practice requirements of a state agency. And it applies to everyone. It's a general applicability rule. And it includes amendments, repeal. But it's not involved in just the state agencies, kind of our internal processes and procedures, but it's how we affect with our license holders and the public. There's a variety of sources of rulemaking. We can have legislative changes, which is a big source of a big source for doing rulemaking. We've got some rules on our agenda today that were results of some bills. Advisory board work groups. We've had several advisory board work groups that have been meeting. Those ideas can come from them as well. TLR staff may identify some issues with rules. Maybe questions are coming up or there's confusion, things that we need to clarify. The 4-year rule review. This is where every state agency goes through the rules and makes sure that are they still necessary? Are they obsolete? Are they? Do we need to make any changes? And then the rule petition, and we have a update later on our agenda about a rule petition. This advisory board, we've had 5 rule petitions since the program has transferred to TDLR, so that's another way that the public can get involved in making a request for rule changes as well. And this is the rule petition. And it's an interested person, Texas resident, business entity located in Texas, governmental subdivision in Texas, or a public-private organization that's not a state agency but located in Texas. In terms of our rulemaking process, this is kind of a high-level, kind of a flow chart of where it starts up here from ideas and drafting. These kind of blue-green squares on here is where we've got the advisory board in here in terms of draft rules coming to the advisory board for your consideration or recommendation. Then they go to the Texas Register, published in the Texas Register for public comment. The public has 30 days to comment. General Counsel's office is reviewing those comments and making any recommended changes. Those rules then come back to the advisory board a second time, and you're being able to see the public comments in the rules the proposed rules again, and then any recommended changes the department is making based on those public comments. And then they're going to the commission, and the commission's getting public comments, the proposed rules, the advisory board's recommendation, the department's recommendation, and then the commission adopts those. Those are published in the Texas Register. So that's kind of a high-level look and flow chart of the rulemaking process. But it is important that the advisory board you see is in there twice. The public is able to come to the advisory board meetings. They're often to make public comments during the comment period. They're able to come to the commission meetings. So we have a very open and transparent process that encourages participation. This is the rule review process. This is that 4-year schedule. In that kind of situation, we just publish a notice of intent. We don't publish the rules as a whole. We just say we're taking a look at these rules. Let us know if there's anything that needs to be updated or in your thoughts. Those type of public comments will end up bringing, if they're substantive, bring back to the advisory board and may have work groups and have those types of discussions. But that 4-year rule review is just to make sure state agencies don't adopt rules and then just kind of put them on the shelf and things keep changing and they don't reflect the current practices or policies and procedures. And again, we've got some rulemaking resources. Again, the AG's office has a handbook. We've put sites to the various chapters in the government code that deal with the Administrative Procedure Act, but then other chapters that also deal with some rulemaking elements in terms of the financial impacts on small and micro businesses and kind of impact on local economies as well. And then links to the Secretary of State website in terms of getting either proposed or adopted rules or the Texas Administrative Code, which is the final adopted rules. And again, the General Counsel's office phone number. And the last is the Public Information Act. And this is often called Open Records Act sometimes. At the federal level, kind of FOIA, the Federal Open Information Act. This is an act that allows each person information about the affairs of the government and their official actions, and it makes all documents, records, or other information relating to official business open to the public. Now, there are some few exceptions. Those are listed out in the statute, but it's important to remember that includes any electronic communication created, transmitted, or received or maintained on any device that's connected with official business. And when it's in doubt, it's the act is construed liberal in granting access to that information. And it's important for the advisory board to know that in terms of the information that we're sending you in terms of advisory board information, all of that is subject to the Public Information Act. So if you get those types of requests, and we may get requests for information, the information to the advisory board, information the advisory board may have relating to your advisory board business. If we have that, we need you to contact the General Counsel's office as soon as possible. And the reason is the Public Information Act requires us to respond in 10 days, whether we respond with the information or seeking an exception with the Attorney General's office. So we need to have a prompt response to that. We cannot ask why somebody's asking for the information. We can help focus their request if they've made just a very broad request to help them narrow what is it they really want. The slide kind of shows some of the exceptions to disclosure in terms of we're not going to relate date of birth or personal email addresses, HIPAA and health information as well. So there are exceptions to that. But again, the purpose of this is to have open and transparent government. And again, there's some list of resources. The Attorney General has a training information and video on this act as well, and a handbook as well. And I think it's really important on here is that we have an open records email address. So if you have requests that come in, or somebody says, hey, can you give me a copy of your materials, direct them to TDLR. It needs to be a written request. They make it to us. And it's open.records@tdlr.texas.gov. And again, if you have questions, the General Counsel's office phone number is there as well. That's kind of a quick view and quick refresher, but if you have questions, like I said, feel free to give us a call, the General Counsel's office, and we can help you with any questions or situations that come up. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Public comment. We'll open up the floor to any public comment. We'll move to F, staff reports. Start with licensing division.
Good morning. I'm Anthony Maldonado. I'm with the licensing division, and I'm here on behalf of Leonard Rivas. So I'll be going over the licensing report with you. And on the report, it'll show you our final total numbers for the fourth quarter and fiscal year 2018. We are also providing to you fiscal year 2019 September through October. For hearing instrument fitters and dispensers, we currently have 3 new licenses, 41 renewed licenses, and online renewals we had 36, with a total population of 688. For the apprentice permits, we had from September to October 6 new licenses issued, 2 licenses renewed, with a total population of 39. And temporary training permits, we had 22 new licenses issued, 2 licenses renewed, with current total population of 126. And it's basically all we have to report from the licensing division, unless y'all have any questions for me. Nope. All right, thank y'all.
Thank you. Number 2, customer service division.
Good morning, Irma Mendoza with Customer Service Division. I'm covering for Tuan Nguyen, which is the manager for this program. You have the report on the stats for the month of September and October. Pretty much they're still on a phone call basis to reach us, and it's about the status on the new applications and renewals. And that's all I have on my report, unless you have any questions for me.
Okay. We don't have any.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move to 3, enforcement division.
Good morning. Excuse me. My name is Jessica Hurtado, and I'm a prosecutor in the Enforcement Division. You can see on the staff report that we have 1 case highlight. This was an agreed order where the respondent voluntarily gave up his temporary training permit for the violation of hearing, fitting, and dispensing without the proper supervision. There was no monetary penalty assessed, but only the revocation of the permit. You also see our key statistics for the fiscal year 2018. 27 cases were open and 32 were resolved with no agreed orders or penalties. And the key statistics for fiscal year 2019, so far we've had 3 cases open and 3 cases were also resolved, one of those being the agreed order. The other 2 were closed as having insufficient evidence. And right now, there are 11 cases currently open. That's all that I have, unless you have any questions.
We do not.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. 4, education and examination division.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. My name is Ray Pizarro, Director for the Education Examination Division. As you can see, the statistics on the practical examination has been remaining steady. I think we're doing a really good job on the exam review committee as we review those items, look at the practices on how we administer the practical exam and how we continue to do improvements on those administration. The next examination for the practical will be January 19th. And we will have another exam review committee sometime in the late spring or summer. That's about all I have for you for today, if you have any questions.
We do not.
Okay.
Okay. 5, regulatory program management division.
Good morning. I'm Katie Bryce with the Regulatory Program Management. You all have my report. I'd just like to go over some of the key items. We've conducted some standard of care work group meetings. The last one was on November 14th. The work group report will be given later. We have worked with our Office of Strategic Communication to update the website. I don't know if you've gotten a chance to go to it yet, but it's basically the same information, but it's been reorganized to make it a lot more user-friendly. So go and check it out if you haven't. We've also sat in on work group meetings with the licensing work group and education and examination work group. We attended the Texas Hearing Aid Association's annual convention, June 14th through 16th, and we always appreciate the opportunity to be there and answer questions from our licensees who are in attendance. We have some personnel updates. Heather Muir has replaced Stephen Mills as the section manager. Heather, do you want to stand up back here? And Steve Eaker is a program specialist who's been assigned to be my backup for this program. Steve, do you want to stand up? Okay, thanks. And then just lastly, our latest edition of the Health Monitor was published December 14th. There's a link to it on our web pages, and also it goes out to all the people who have subscribed for email updates. So do you all have any questions for me? Anything? Okay,
We do not.
thank you.
6, the Executive Office.
Good morning, Carla James, TDLR. First of all, this is my first meeting with you all, so thanks for the welcome and appreciate your service to Texas and your highly paid positions there. And for those of you watching on YouTube, they don't get paid. I'm just being silly. So a couple things to update you on. I believe the last time that you all met in May, we had just finished our strategic plan, so there probably was not a extensive report on that. But a strategic plan is something that all state agencies are required to do every 2 years. And we take that very seriously here at TDLR. We traveled around the state and spoke to many of our licensees. I believe we were in 5 different cities this year, and we had over 8,000 comments through those personal interactions and then an online survey. We took all those comments and put them out into what we call buckets, things that we could take care of quickly, things that required rule modifications, and things that would require legislative adjustments. And we submitted that report in the summer. We have several initiatives in there that we'll be talking to the legislature about. And that's really our blueprint going into the legislative session, which starts next week, actually. And so that's what we're asking to have looked at, but the legislature, of course, will make the determination on what they want to address. It's just simply us saying, we've noticed these things, our licensees have noticed these things, Texans have noticed these things, and we present it to you for your evaluation. The next thing that we had to do prior to the legislative session was put together our budget requests for the next 2 years, and that was submitted over the summer. Again, that will be addressed during the legislative session starting next week. And we asked for a couple of exceptional items this time. Last time we went into the 85th session, the legislature had requested all agencies reduce their budget by 4%, and we, of course, complied with that. We are asking for a little bit of that back. We understand the economy in Texas is strong, but you don't go out with your hands out every single time. You have to be innovative in the way you do your business, and we take pride on that at TDLR. But we did request 2% back. We had lost 14 positions. We're requesting 7 of those back in our enforcement areas, our inspections areas, and our licensing areas. Trying to get us back to TDLR standards, which we like to consider higher than anybody else considers us. We're our own worst critic. And so we're requesting those funds back. We're also requesting funds to create a new licensing system. What our licensees and the general public don't see when they go onto our website or texas.gov to get licensed is that on the back side we're working off 9 different licensing systems, which means that all of our staff have to be proficient, able to move from system to system, simply to work on the licensing process, the inspection process, the enforcement process, everything that affects you all, we're working off 9 different systems. So we're requesting some money to address that. And finally, we've requested some resources to address human trafficking. And I've said this before in some of our advisory board meetings, and that is, if you are watching this on YouTube, you're thinking, what in the world does TDLR have to do with human trafficking? And it is a unique situation that we're in, whereby we have authority to go in through our inspection process and identify things that look odd, that we can report to local law enforcement, things that look like they are related to human trafficking or sexual trafficking. We're not going to go in and arrest anyone. That's not our job in this state. But we do have that unique opportunity to go in without a search warrant as part of our inspection process and identify oddities that we can report to local law enforcement. So I don't have a lot to report to you other than that. It's going to be a busy session for us, but it always is. And I believe we will probably try to have the next advisory board meeting after the session is over. The session ends in late May, so that we can report to you on the progress of any items that were addressed during the legislative session that may address or affect your profession. Open for questions at this point if you have any.
Carla, Mary Winston, TLR. So it's typically that is what we do, and that's because session is going and there's no need to brave whatever weather Texas is bringing us at that time. But as soon as Carla said that, Wendy looked up. But it's because we couldn't get a quorum today, weather, just different things coming from the holiday. And we will be having a meeting if we can grab everybody to get in here, or at least a quorum to get in here, because we do have rules to go over, and we want at least a quorum. We love the whole board to be able to come in, and let's take a look at them, a deep dive, so we can move them forward. So Wendy was ready today. Wendy's always ready, but
Wendy's always
literally. But we were thinking, we were just kind of discussing, because we lost a quorum kind of at the last minute, right? But that's just how things go. It's called life. We're going to poll everyone. We can poll you 3 here, but we're also going to make phone calls and write emails and see when we can get a date. And we're just going to have to fit it in there somewhere, because we really want to move forward on the rules. Unfortunately, this meeting was set to kind of get the rules in front of the full commission for the next meeting. It's not going to work out, but we're going to get it as soon as we can. So we will be polling members, whoever is rained in, snowed in, iced in, and couldn't make it, and who's watching. So we will try to get you guys in. But for the most part, no, we're not going to be able to have advisory board meetings during legislative session time, because there's just more to talk about after the session.
Thank you for the clarification, Mayor. My apologies. Open for any questions, should you have any.
I don't think we have any. Thank you. Number 7, General Counsel's Office.
Hi. Wendy Pello, Assistant General Counsel. General Counsel has just a brief staff report. At our last meeting, we had let the advisory board know that we had received a rulemaking petition regarding Rule 112.95, information on prospective amplification candidates. At the time we had received the petition, we were still in our 60-day period where we get to decide whether to make the rule changes or to deny the petition. So we had just given you just a status report at that point that we had received the rulemaking petition. We have since responded to that petition within the 60 days, and we did deny the petition. You have a copy of our letter and the reasons why we denied the petition and addressed the petitioner's request and the issues raised by the petitioner. And so I can happy to answer any questions if you have any questions. Okay, thank you.
We don't have any. Thank you. Okay, G and H, I believe are those both requiring a quorum? We'll be saving those for the next meeting?
Yes, to take any action, we'd have to do a quorum. We can walk through them with you if you would like today. You won't be able to take any action, or if you'd like, we can wait until your next meeting.
Okay, we'll, they'll be on the next agenda, right?
Well, they'll be on the next agenda if you
We'll
didn't
just
take
go through them
action.
the next
Okay,
meeting.
we'll roll them over.
Updates from work group and possible recommendations. Do we have standard of care representative present?
Mr. Davila? We can do that at this meeting, but we can't make any action. or
Another
take
one
any
that we
action.
can push
You
to the
wanna
next?
punt it? Okay. we'll do that.
We'll find the right date and
Yes,
get it
perfect.
set. How
So-
about Jay, recommendations for agenda items for the next board meeting?
I think
Another.
we just stated all those.
Yeah, I think we did. You're going to circulate an email, I guess, with times and dates, suggested times?
We're gonna hunt for everybody with a flashlight in the daytime.
All right. Any other business that we can do today?
I appreciate you coming, Mary Winston again, and we at least got training for
Sure.
some of you. And we will contact everyone and see when we can get a date and when we can fit it in everyone's schedule. So sooner than later, but
All right.
we'll let you know.
Well, we'll be back.
Perfect, thank you.
All right. Well, I guess we'll adjourn. Okay.